So, here's a question for you. Can a secret letter, just between a husband and wife, actually be a crime? It sounds kind of crazy, right? Well, that is the exact question at the heart of a landmark legal battle we're going to dive into today.
Okay, what happens when a totally private family letter, one that's full of some pretty serious accusations, ends up in a court of law? You might think this is just some messy family drama, but the case we're talking about, MC Verghese versus TJ Ponnen, went all the way to India's Supreme Court. And trust me, it completely changed the game when it comes to the line between what's private in a marriage and what's, well, a matter for the law.
So, let's set the scene. Our story kicks off right in the middle of a pretty tense marriage. It's July 1964. We've got a husband, TJ Ponnen, living over in Bombay, and he sends 3 letters to his wife, Rathi. Now, she's not with him. She's staying with her parents way back in Trivandrum.
And let me tell you, these were not love letters. Not even close. After his daughter, Rathi, gives him the letters, her father, MC Verghese, reads them in. He is furious, absolutely livid. Why? Because he claims these letters are filled with defamatory stuff about him. So what does he do? He goes and files a criminal complaint against his very own son-in-law.
All right, so now we get to the defense. Ponnen, the son-in-law, doesn't even try to deny he wrote the letters. Nope. Instead, his lawyers get, really clever. They come up with this 2-part defense, basically arguing that the whole case should just be thrown out right then and there before it even gets started.
And this defense was brilliant, really. It boiled down to 2 key arguments. First, they said, hey, in the eyes of the law, a husband and wife are basically one person. So sending a letter to your spouse, that's not publishing anything. It's like talking to yourself. The second claim was all about evidence. They argued that conversations or letters between spouses are legally protected. So you can't even use these letters in court. They're inadmissible.
Okay, let's break down that first point, because it's super important. The word publication in defamation law doesn't mean what you think. It's not about publishing a book or a newspaper. All it means is that you communicated the nasty comment to at least one other person, a third party. Ponnen's whole argument was that his wife, Rathi, wasn't a third person. She was part of the one person that was their marriage. See how clever that is?
Now that second argument, that leaned on a really powerful legal idea called spousal privilege. It's this shield that's meant to protect the privacy of a marriage. The basic idea is that you can't force one spouse to get up in court and spill the beans on what their partner told them in private. It's supposed to be a sacred space.
So with these 2 really strong arguments on the table, the case kicks off this total roller coaster ride through the Indian legal system. And I mean, what a ride. It seemed like none of the judges could agree on anything.
And this just shows you the legal chaos, right? First, the district magistrate is like, yep, I agree with Ponnen, and discharges him. But then the sessions judge comes in and completely overturns that order, saying the case has to proceed. Then, get this, the Kerala High Court reverses it again, siding back with Ponnen. It's this constant back and forth, this legal ping pong that basically guaranteed a final showdown at the Supreme Court. Someone had to settle this.
So finally, after years of all this legal wrangling, the father-in-law, MC Verghese, he's not giving up. He makes one last, final appeal to the highest court in the land, the Supreme Court of India. This is it, the final stop.
And when the Supreme Court made its decision, it was incredibly clear. No ambiguity. They sided with the father-in-law. The appeal was allowed, that last dismissal was overturned, and they sent it right back down, ordering the district magistrate to go ahead with the defamation trial against Ponnen.
But hold on a second. Why? I mean, the son-in-law's arguments seem pretty solid, didn't they? This is the really fascinating part. Let's break down exactly how the Supreme Court thought this through, because this is where the real legal magic happens.
First up, the court went straight for the big one, that old English common law idea that Ponnen's whole defense was built on, this idea of spousal unity. The court asked a very simple question: does that even apply in India?
And the answer they came back with was a loud, clear no. Just no. The court stated flat out that this old idea of a husband and wife being a single legal entity, it has absolutely no place in Indian criminal law. Spouses are independent individuals in the eyes of the law, period.
And that is so crucial, because with that one statement, Ponnen's entire first defense just crumbled. It was gone. If a husband and wife are legally separate people, then sending a defamatory letter from one to the other, yep, that absolutely does count as publication.
Okay, so defense number 1 is toast. But what about the second one, the spousal privilege argument? Surely the letters themselves, the physical pieces of paper, were protected, right?
Well, this is where the court's logic gets really sharp. They drew this absolutely brilliant line in the sand. They explained that Section 122, the spousal privilege rule, it's a testimonial privilege. What that means is it stops someone from forcing the wife, Rathi, to get on the witness stand and testify about what her husband wrote. But, and this is the key, it is not a ban on the physical evidence, on the letter itself.
You see, since the father-in-law, a third party, was the one who actually had the letters, he could present them as evidence. He didn't need his daughter to get involved or say a single word. The privilege protects the spouse from being forced to testify, but it doesn't make the evidence just disappear if someone else has it. And just like that, poof, Ponnen's second line of defense was gone too.
So you can see this ruling was about way more than just one messy family fight. It set some incredibly powerful legal precedents that are still shaping Indian law today, all these decades later.
So, let's recap the big takeaways. What did this all mean? First, the case made it crystal clear. Spouses are separate individuals under criminal law. The old "they're one" idea is out. Second, saying something defamatory to your spouse about a third person, that can still be defamation. And third, it sharpened our understanding of evidence versus testimony. You can't force a spouse to talk, but if the evidence, like a letter, ends up in someone else's hands, it might just be fair game. This all happened back in 1970, and the judgment drew this really important line. It created a delicate balance, right? It protects the privacy of a marriage by saying you can't force spouses to testify against each other. But at the same time, it says you can't use that privacy as a shield to get away with a potential crime against someone else.
And all of this leaves us with one last really fascinating thought. This whole case was about physical, paper letters. But what about today? In our world of DMs, texts, screenshots, and forwarded emails, how do these same principles apply? It makes you think, doesn't it? The line between what's a private spousal chat and what's public evidence is probably blurrier and more important now than it has ever been.